The Tulsa Massacre. The day black wealth was burned to ashes, imagine a city within a city, a place where dreams weren't just whispered, but built, where black doctors, lawyers, business owners, and teachers thrived, in a time when much of America told them they shouldn't even dare to dream. This was Tulsa, Oklahoma, and within it, a neighborhood called Greenwood, a place so rich in success, pride, and prosperity. It was known as Black Wall Street, but one night, just one of that dream was burned to the ground. What happened there wasn't just a riot. It was a massacre, a targeted destruction of black excellence. This is the story of how America's black utopia was erased, not by time, but by hate. The rise of Black Wall Street. Let's rewind. The year is 1921, but to understand the fire that would come, you have to look at the spark before it. After the Civil War ended in 1865, millions of formerly enslaved black Americans were free, but far from equal. Most were pushed into poverty, sharecropping, or low-wage work, yet many refused to settle. In the early 1900s, oil money flowed through Oklahoma. Tulsa was booming, and just north of the city's railroad tracks, a man named O.W. Gurley, a wealthy black landowner, decided to build something revolutionary, a community where black people could live, work, and prosper on their own terms. He bought 40 acres of land and opened a boarding house. Soon, other black entrepreneurs followed. J.B. Stratford built the luxurious 54-room Stratford Hotel, one of the finest in the country. Dr. A.C. Jackson, a brilliant surgeon, was so skilled that white doctors called him the most able Negro surgeon in America. Dozens of shops, theaters, cafes, tailors, barbers, and real estate firms filled Greenwood Avenue. Money circulated within the community, sometimes 19 times before it left. Tulsa's white newspapers mocked it as Little Africa. But to its residents, it was pride. It was proof that black excellence wasn't just possible, it was unstoppable. Greenwood was the crown jewel of black America, place where you could feel the pulse of possibility. The spark. The elevator incident, but in a racist America, success came with danger. On May 30th, 1921, a 19-year-old black shoe shiner named Dick Rowland entered the Drexel building downtown. He took the elevator to the top floor, operated by a young white woman named Sarah Page. No one knows exactly what happened inside that elevator. Maybe he tripped. Maybe she screamed out of surprise. But by the time Rowland ran out, rumors had already begun. By evening, local papers printed the headline, "Nab Negro for Attacking Girl in Elevator." That one line lit the match. By nightfall, white mobs began to gather outside the Tulsa County Courthouse where Rowland was held. They demanded a lynching. But the black men of Greenwood, many of them World War I veterans, weren't about to let that happen. Around 75 armed black men marched to the courthouse to protect Rowland. One white man tried to disarm a black veteran. A shot went off, and chaos erupted. The night of fire. The massacre begins. What followed wasn't a riot. It was a coordinated assault. As night fell, thousands of white Tulsans, some deputized by local police, stormed Greenwood. They looted homes, set businesses on fire, and shot anyone who tried to flee. Eyewitnesses described planes flying overhead, dropping incendiary bombs. Yes, planes. It was one of the first aerial assaults on American soil, carried out by Americans against their own citizens. Families hid in basements as the world above them turned to ash. Doctors were killed trying to treat the wounded. Women and children were shot in the streets. By morning, 35 city blocks were destroyed. Over 1,200 homes burned, and as many as 300 black residents were dead. Though the official count tried to erase that number for decades, those who survived were rounded up at gunpoint, herded, into camps at the fairgrounds and held for days, forced to wear green tags like prisoners. Tulsa's police called it order, but what they maintained was silence. The aftermath. Erasing the evidence after the smoke cleared, Greenwood looked like a war zone, ashes, rubble, and ghosts. Insurance companies refused to pay out a single claim. Their excuse? The policies didn't cover acts of riot, even though those riots were committed by white mobs, aided by local authorities. No one was ever convicted, not one. And Dick Rowland, the man whose crime started it all? The charges were dropped days later because Sarah Page refused to press them. So an entire community was burned to the ground for nothing. The rebuild. Hope from the ashes. But here's what they didn't expect. Greenwood rose again. The survivors, left with nothing but their will, started to rebuild. By the 1930s, new homes, shops, and churches stood where the ashes once were. They refused to disappear. They refused to be forgotten. But history tried to bury them again. This time, with silence for decades, schools didn't teach the Tulsa Massacre. Even newspapers avoided the topic. It wasn't until the late 1990s that the U.S. officially began to investigate what really happened in 1921 mass. Graves are still being discovered today. A century later, the earth is still revealing the truth. The legacy. What Greenwood means today, so what does Tulsa mean now? It's not just a story about loss. It's a warning. It's a mirror. It shows what happens when success threatens supremacy and how silence lets injustice live. But it's also a testament to resilience because from those ashes came artists, activists, and leaders who carried the fire of Greenwood forward. Tulsa is more than a massacre. It's a lesson. You can burn buildings, you can bury stories, but you cannot kill legacy. The Tulsa Massacre isn't ancient history, it's American history, and it reminds us that true justice doesn't begin with forgetting. It begins with remembering. This is the story of the day black wealth was burned to ashes, but Greenwood's spirit still burns bright. Like, share, and subscribe to Untold Black Legacies, where we keep the stories alive that history tried to silence. Because the past may whisper, but we're here to make it speak again.